So welcome everyone to December's edition of the Twin Cities Immigration Forum. This month's edition is special not only because we celebrate International Migrants Day on December 18th and Human Rights Day on December 10th, but also this is the last Twin Cities Immigration Forum of the year. We're very grateful to people who have been with us throughout the year, who are just joining this time and feel like it's a real milestone to have accomplished 2 years of immigration forums, monthly immigration forums. My name is Michelle Rivero. I'm the director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs for the city of Minneapolis, and I will turn it to my counterpart, Edmundo Lijo.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming, joining us today. I hope you find today's discussions interesting, as we are going to talk about human rights and the rights of migrants, and how organizations in the Twin Cities that we've been working with support those rights on a daily basis. So hopefully you'll get something out of today's discussion. But I am Edmundo Lijo. I'm with the City of St. Paul. I'm Assistant City Attorney, and I manage the Immigrant and Refugee Affairs Program for the City of St. Paul. And welcome. And with that, Michelle, turn it back to you.
Super, thank you. So I'm putting the agenda into the chat one more time for people who've just joined us. As I mentioned, December 10th is Human Rights Day and December 18th is International Migrants Day, both dates established by the United Nations in recognizing rights that we all hold as humans and the rights of migrants. United Nations International Days are opportunities to educate the public, to mobilize political will and resources to address global issues and celebrate the achievements of humanity. We encourage people to learn more about human rights and the rights of migrants. And today we'll talk about how our cities and states encourage the protection and defense of human rights and respect of migrants. People who will be speaking today are examples of how we do that right here at home. Human rights and the rights of migrants are relevant at home and here in our day-to-day lives. And we hope that today's conversation fosters a building of momentum for recognition of these two occasions, and an appreciation for how honoring and defending the rights of humanity and migrants are the foundational basis of immigrant inclusion. So I'll put a little bit of information about Human Rights Day and International Migrants Day in the chat, and encourage others to read more and learn more and share information about these two important occasions with others. And with that, I will turn to Jane Grubman with the International Institute of Minnesota. She's our first speaker, and we'll be talking about the Guaranteed Basic Income Program. So Jane, thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the introduction. And thanks to both you and Edmundo for inviting me to talk about our project. So I'm going to jump in because I know you guys have a packed agenda. So I want to give everybody kind of a thumbnail sketch of the work that we're doing at the Institute with our Guaranteed Income Project. But I'm going to also want to leave time for people to ask questions also, or to respond to their questions if they're going to put them in the chat. Is that how you do it, Michelle? Put them in, they want people questions in the chat? Okay, that's great. You can just put them in the chat and then we can do them at the end.
Yep, either way, whatever people feel comfortable with.
Yep, it's great. So about a year ago, last December, the city of St. Paul and the Institute started talking about a partnership for guaranteed income. So the city had received private philanthropy funds to start a guaranteed income project. And so we were really excited to partner with them. I think we're still the only project in the country that is focusing their guaranteed income funds on new Americans. So of course, we're very, very excited about that. And we're already starting to see the impacts of those investments. So we were, because it was private philanthropy dollars, we had a lot of autonomy and discretion in terms of how we designed the program. And we worked with the city very closely on that. They were very involved and very supportive. And so we were able to enroll 25 families who will receive $750 per month for 1 year. And we provide that funding to them through direct deposit into their bank accounts. That's the majority of people in the program. There's a few people that decided they would prefer a prepaid credit card. So some of the folks are doing that, but most of them, it's going right into their bank account. So we were able to design the criteria, and our staff talked about that, and we really felt like we wanted to serve the people that had the most barriers. And so we started, we made a list of criteria, and we prioritized single parents with kids under 15, large families, families over 4 people in the family. The data show now that the largest group of families actually has 7 to 8 people in the family, so they're large families. And then also families that have health limitations, so whether mental health or physical health limitations that are, preventing them from getting work. And then the 4th category was people waiting for a long time for their work authorization cards, and they didn't have resources or the ability to go to work. So those are the 4 groups of people that we're serving and that were identified by our staff of who was most needy. All right, and so we also, the majority of people in the program are refugees and folks that came as humanitarian parolees. So 64% of the people enrolled in the program are Afghans, and most of those folks came under the humanitarian parolee program. The second largest group are folks from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the next largest group is Guatemala, and then the remaining are Ethiopia, folks from Burma, and a few other smaller groups that are enrolled. So it's a pretty diverse group, but Afghans are the largest groups involved. So we do have some income data. So the majority of the people, so well over half, well, 2/3 of the people enrolled in the program are either not working or their income is under $40,000 annually. So you can imagine for our staff that enrolled people in the program, the excitement when we were able to tell them that. And let me just also say that most of the folks in this program are very newly arrived. When they were enrolled in the program, we started enrolling people in April of this year, and then got everybody enrolled by early August. And so you just can imagine people that were very newly arrived, many of them here less than 6 months, when we were able to tell them that you're going to get $750 a month that you didn't expect. So that was very exciting to tell families, and people were very, very grateful. So one thing that we felt, we the Institute, we the city felt was very important is that we have research. So when the year comes to an end, what did this funding for families accomplish? How did it help to move their lives forward? So we're partnering with the University of Illinois at Chicago. Dr. Flynn is our evaluator. And so she's digging in, talking to the families. People can opt out if they don't want to be in the evaluation. But people we're looking at really trying to quantify how did it help families. So she's going to have qualitative and quantitative data. But we did just meet with her about a month ago. And so she does have some preliminary data. We were interested in how are people using these funds. So they could opt out. They didn't have to tell us that, but a lot of folks opted in, and we can actually look at how they expended their funds. And we wanted to do that just to make it easier for us to kind of draw conclusions from that and see how people are spending their money. So people are using it for emergency savings. So in case there's an emergency in their family, they're saving the funds. People are buying cars. We all know the need in Minnesota. You really need to have a car to get to your job. And then the third biggest item was buying items for their children. So clothes, a couple people mentioned bikes, and things that they need for school. So those are the 3 biggest areas to date. But I think the other thing I just want to mention is, I think, both our evaluator is seeing this and their staff are seeing this, is just the psychological relief that people have to know that they can have some savings and that they have some extra funds. And I think there's quite a bit of research coming out about these guaranteed income programs, even though they're fairly new, they're fairly young. And the research is showing that very thing, that, when people have some psychological relief about their financial worries, it gives them the mental space to do some planning. And it also is showing that low-income people are no different than anyone else, and they're using their funds. Well, maybe they are different than some people, but these folks are using their funds very wisely, investing in things that are going to move their lives forward. So yeah, that's it's very exciting. We'll keep learning more from the research that we're doing, and sharing that with the community. So very happy to entertain any questions that anyone has.
Oh, Michelle, you're muted.
See, I was going to say thank you so much for that wonderful information, Jane. And if people are interested in learning more about the program, if there is a link you would direct them to, that might be helpful as people are thinking about questions that you may have. Please feel free to go ahead and ask your question. If you have it, feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat, or just ask it out. Thank you.
Jane, I do have a question. So the money can be used for anything. So
Yep.
I know one of the questions that keep coming up with some of the recent arrivals is, can they send money home, because people are really worried about family at home, and there was no restrictions on people sending money home.
Yeah, there were no restrictions on the funds, which was one of the great things about it. And we haven't had anybody identify that that's what they're, at least in our cohort, that's what they're doing with the funds. But we may find that out. But yes, you could do that.
Yeah, and Jane, a follow-up question too. I know you had a limited number of families, and I'm sure that there's a lot of interest in an expansion of the program. So are there thoughts around that, if that could be a possibility, or if individuals are interested in supporting that, how would they, how could they communicate with you?
Oh, thanks, Michelle. That's a great question. So, yeah, a year goes very fast. So, we at the Institute are thinking about how do we sustain a program like this, and that's another reason why the evaluation was so important. We're also in conversation with the city to talk about how might we get more families enrolled in the program, or prolong a long period of time that people are in the program.
Thank you. And I don't know if oh, please go ahead, Susan. Sounds like, it looks like you have your hand up.
Just quickly, are you full for next year? Are there any more openings?
So yeah, thanks for the question. This is at this point, it's only a 1-year program. So all the 25 slots are taken. They got filled very quickly. So we don't know what will happen for the next year, but for now we don't have any slots.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I will add though, St. Paul does have another guaranteed income program going on right now, but there are some restrictions. It's open to anyone regardless of immigration status, but the restrictions are that the family has to be part of the college-bound savings program, and that's a program that St. Paul has for children who are born and live in St. Paul. They can be born, let's say they're born in Minneapolis, but the family was living in St. Paul at the time of the birth. They would qualify for a savings program. I believe it's $50 to open a college savings account for that child. And then through this guaranteed income program, the child would receive, I think, $1,000 a year addition for the first year. And then the family members would receive $1,000 a month to do with the money as they see fit and need. So if people have recent arrivals, but they've had a child that was born in St. Paul, or a child while they were living in St. Paul, since they've been here, they could qualify for that program, and that's currently open and available through the city's College Bound Savings Program, and it's on our website.
Yep, Edmundo, you might want to put that in the chat too, so
Sure.
people have
I'll
access
pull
to
that
it.
in. Yep.
Yep. So thank you again, Jane, for sharing this wonderful information.
Thanks,
Really
Michelle.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
If there's additional information you may want to share in the chat for our audience, please feel free to do so. And to keep things moving along, I will introduce our next speaker, who I think is going to be Rochelle, and I see you visible. So Rochelle King with the Department of Human Services Refugee Programs Office to talk about 2022 welcoming initiatives, including Afghan and Ukrainian arrivals to Minnesota. So I'll turn it over to you, Rochelle. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Sure, thanks. And thanks for the invitation, Michelle. And it's nice to see so many familiar names and some new names on the list as well. So my name is Rochelle King, and I am at the Department of Human Services and Service State Refugee Coordinator here in Minnesota. And what that means is, as far as like the role of DHS, we really are focused on people who have a humanitarian protection status. We serve as a voice in state government for those populations and liaison between state entities and the federal government around issues related to people who are arriving with humanitarian protection status. So I'm going to do just a couple of highlights. I know you guys have lots of things to talk about, but just to kind of talk about sort of like global who's coming to Minnesota. Does that seem right, Michelle? Okay. For those of you who I know see some names that might be on other calls have heard this information as well, but just looking forward to 2023, when we're talking about sort of like the federal fiscal year that just started at the beginning of October, the state of Minnesota has an approved capacity for refugee arrivals. So people who are arriving through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program was just announced. The total, when you add all of the local resettlement agencies together, around 1,700 people. We're seeing a lot of diversity in who's coming through that program right now. I think in the people who have arrived so far, I think we have like 12 or 13 different nationalities that are represented in the arrivals who have come so far. What the federal government is saying is that this administration has set a ceiling as far as the maximum number of people who can be admitted in a year to the U.S. as at 125,000, but really functionally, the program is still in a rebuilding phase. So what we're hearing from resettlement partners and from the federal government is that those numbers are going to start slow and build up over the course of the year. So I think we'll see that same trend happen here in Minnesota. So that's one thing. The other thing is just kind of thinking about other populations who are also arriving to our state. There's been a lot of talk around folks who are coming right now, Ukrainians who are coming through the Uniting for Ukraine program. U4U, if you hear that. Those folks are entering with a parole status. In Minnesota, we don't find out, and no states find out about people before they come. So they're not connected in the same way as some other populations are. And so we're only finding out about people once they are accessing services here. What we know is that there have been about around 2,000 or so people in the United States who have filed for others to join them here through the Uniting for Ukraine program. We don't know that that's how many people who have arrived. Our best guess right now is about 1,000 people or so have accessed services in the state of Minnesota who came through the U4U program. And that program does not have a ceiling. Nationally, about 100,000 people who have arrived so far. And like I said, we think about 1,000 people to Minnesota. But that is a program that's going to continue. Those people are eligible for state and federal benefits. And so if you happen to come in contact with people, make sure that they get connected through their human services office to apply for any benefits. And or we have a contract with right now with the Ukrainian American Community Center and working with other partners and resettlement agencies to make sure that there's some navigation services to help with that. Before I go, I will also put in the chat a Google Doc that has information about a weekly roundtable call that we host through our office if you're interested in being connected with those weekly updates about what's going on there. So that's the second population. Another thing that one more population that I want to talk about is at the national level, the U.S. has seen a lot of people arriving, Cuban and Haitians arriving. That's a trend that started a while ago and is continuing now. They're seeing about 30,000 people, or I think it was 26,000 people per month. Cubans and Haitians are arriving in the United States. So you do the math out, that's a lot of people. People who arrive, and we're starting to see more people in Minnesota who are Cubans or Haitians who are entering the US in varying status. This is another thing I just want to plant the seed. If you're seeing people who are Cubans or Haitians who are recent arrivals, they also are eligible for state and federal benefits as Cuban Haitian entrants, irregardless of kind of what their status is, like 99.999% of the time. This is a group that is really disconnected from services oftentimes. And so we want to make sure those of you who are on the call who are connected can make sure that those people get connected to the services that they're eligible for. They're eligible for refugee cash assistance. They're eligible for TANF benefits, those sorts of things. Even if they are in removal proceedings, even if they've applied for asylum, all of those things, their nationality, and that they are here is sort of the basis of their eligibility. So I want to plant that seed as well. And then I'm going to stop talking, but I'll make sure to get the Ukrainian roundtable information in the chat. I'll make sure to get a link to our site in the chat. So if you have people that you're connected with from the populations that I mentioned, it lists the service providers that our office funds who would be able to offer some services to folks. And there's one more thing that I thought I was going to, those are the two things that I'll put in the chat. And Michelle, you can cue me if I'm missing something.
See,
Thanks,
I
Rochelle.
actually also added the Ukrainian American Community Center link just so that people had it in case they're interested. Would welcome people to, if you have questions for Rochelle with regard to refugee resettlement, newer arrivals, arrivals that the state has assisted over the course of 2022. Now is the opportunity to ask your question. So please feel free to raise your hand, just ask it out or put your question into the chat and we'll just give it a moment. Rochelle, I wonder if you could also put some general, is there a link where people can learn more about the work of the Refugee Programs Office and explore more? That would be really helpful.
Rochelle, I also have a quick question on Cubans and Haitians, because we have gotten a few calls about Cubans. I don't think I've heard of any Haitians arriving, but Cubans, because we have a history of settling Cubans here in the Twin Cities. How would those individuals get connected to services? Should they just go through the county? Should they contact your office?
Any of the above. So we're trying to make sure that counties have good guidance because they don't see people very often and their status is super confusing. So people should, if they go to the county and they have those status, that should be a good gateway. Otherwise, they can access the services that we fund through our office. So the link that I'll put in will show the agencies that we fund, and they should be able to access that way. Or if they're having trouble, again, connect with us, connect with me. I can connect somebody on my team to make sure that they get connected as well.
Thank you. Great.
Yep. Yeah, and any way that people can help us connect to that population, we'd really appreciate it because, again, I think that is one group of people that is very disconnected from services that they are eligible for.
Wonderful. And I'm seeing another question in the chat, Rochelle, from Kathleen. After Afghans and Ukrainians, what are the other places that have high populations of migration to Minnesota? And does your office have that list with numbers?
Yes, it was just on a call and I shared a public site that people can access as well. So there's a public site. So we have that information in Minnesota. I think the next largest population right now for refugee arrivals, it was Somali, followed by Democratic Republic of Congo, followed by, I can't remember the other ones, but RAPS.net, if you go on there, this is the Department of State actually has a public facing website. If you go to RAPS.net, and I'll get that in the chat too, the upper right-hand corner, there's a reports tab. And that has both national reports as well as local reports. They update it on a monthly basis. So anytime you want to, you don't have to be dependent on our office or any other meetings. You can go right on there and find the most up-to-date information about how many people have arrived to Minnesota and what are their nationalities.
Super.
Would that
Thank you.
include people who are like currently migrating from the southern border who aren't technically refugees, or is that just refugees?
No, it includes refugees. It has SIVs, so special immigrant visa holders, and then it had evacuees from Operation Allies Welcome. But it's just the populations who are the considered the refugee populations through the Department of State. So unfortunately, there's not a really good one place to find that information.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Rochelle? Thank you so much, Rochelle. Really appreciate you hopping on this call and sharing this information. I know you're a super busy person, so we're really grateful that you're able to take some time and spend it with us. So thank you again. And Edmundo, I think I'm going to turn it over to you for the next speaker.
Okay. Give me a second to get back to. All right. Let's see. Next, we have Stephanie from Alight. Are you with us?
I am
Hi.
with you. Can you hear me
Hi.
okay?
Yes, we can. Welcome
Awesome.
and here to tell us all about Alight and the work you've been doing. So welcome.
I am. Yeah. And can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to breeze through some slides here, and I'm going to try my very best to stick to the 5 minutes that I have. But I'm going to start just by giving a little bit of an overview of who Alight is, and kind of our history, and then the programming that we've been doing in the United States, and particularly in this Minnesota community. So, Alight is an organization that's been around for about 45 years, and we've worked globally all over the world. You can see on this slide, it represents both on the map and then also in verbiage, some of the countries that we work in. We work in over 20 countries in various programs, really meeting people on their journey of displacement, wherever that might be, and providing key services along the way. Those countries you can see are really widespread. And then most recently, we've actually started working in the United States and also done a response in Poland right after Russia's invasion. And I'll talk with you a little bit about two key programs that we have right here in Minnesota that people can actively get involved in, and many people on the call that I recognize are key connections and key communities that we rely on in order to do this programming. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a program that I lead. So I will say that I know a lot about this program, and I'll also talk a little bit about our Welcome Home program, which is led by my colleague Sonia. But to give you a little bit of kind of context of the sponsor program to begin with, many of you know these key things, but 7 million Ukrainians, and that number just keeps going up. Most of them women, children, and the elderly have fled Ukraine since Russia's invasion. And like I mentioned, Alight was actually on the ground in Poland just days after that invasion, providing services at the border, services in Poland, greeting people as they departed and fled. And that's what we saw right at the beginning, is several European countries raising their hands saying, we're going to create pathways and safe havens for people who are fleeing. And then the United States in April decided to join those countries in creating a safe haven pathway for people who are making their way out of Ukraine. That's called the Uniting for Ukraine program. Often people say U4U. I know it was just mentioned a few times already. You might have a lot of experience understanding it, maybe a little. I'll just dive into it for just a moment, just so you kind of understand where Alight comes in. So this pathway offers this opportunity for 125,000 Ukrainians, and that number just keeps getting bigger as well, to come to the United States on a humanitarian parole visa for an initial 2 years. The difference with this, and I'm sure we've already heard this a little bit today, is that the Ukrainian family must have a sponsor in the United States to open this pathway and unlock this parole period. So what we've done at Alight is open up our program to be supportive to sponsors during that journey that they take. truly understand and recognize that it's a really large commitment and a huge responsibility that covers really making sure people are not only on their feet when they come to the country, they have someone to greet them at the airport, have temporary housing, support them financially, emotionally, but also be there throughout their parole period to make sure that the family is feeling taken care of and feeling connected. And so what we work to do is, in partnership with an organization called Welcome.us, is develop out this program where people can match with Ukrainian families. And then sponsor groups get the support from us to help them navigate this responsibility, this large commitment that they're taking to be a sponsor, making sure that they know what they're stepping into, know what those expectations are, and have a support system along the way. We have dedicated Alight guides who work with every sponsor group. We do Q&A sessions for sponsors every single week, twice a week over Zoom. We host in-person sessions and gatherings. We also have e-learning trainings for sponsors to take. And then that dedicated Alight guide is really there for them along the way to answer questions and also just do check-ins. Make sure that every week prior to the arrival of the family, the sponsor group is preparing. And then once the family arrives, really helping that sponsor group navigate those key resources that the family is going to need. There are so many amazing resources, so many amazing organizations that are there to support, and making sure the sponsor group knows how to navigate those and who to go to for what, and then also what their responsibility is within that space as well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Welcome Home program now. I could talk for hours about the sponsor program, but I'll get on with the next few moments here. So in August 2021, Minnesota started welcoming over 1,300 displaced Afghans. So this is speaking to the Afghan community now and our welcoming that we've done for them. This has been a bit of a longer program than, or a lot of a longer program than our sponsor program. But Alight partnered with the state of Minnesota to set up and fully prepare 131 homes in the Twin Cities. And that means really make sure the house feels like a home. Make sure there's also really culturally relevant items in the house, and that the food items reflect that as well. And they've served over 100 families through the Alight market that was opened as well. Afghans were given the opportunity to shop for free and new items for their homes, and really also make sure that they had the support system there, interpreters and volunteers to support them as they went to the market and explored it and then were able to take things home. And then right now, speaking about some of the current programming, so that was right when the Welcome Home program began. We do monthly field trips for women and youth, experiencing and showcasing the vibrancy of Minnesota. There's a year-long program for Afghan women in doing what they love most, which is sewing and sewing in community, which is amazing. It also provides a really safe support system for mental health support, and weaves that into the programming so that it's an outlet for that as well. And then one of the most exciting things that has been developed is the Ask Alight program, which it's a WhatsApp resource hub available for the new community. It's made to both promote events and resources, but also be a really confidential means of communication so that the newly arrived Afghan communities can reach out and ask for support, ask for help in their language, and be supported in that space as well. If you'd like to hear more, and I know that I have maybe a few moments for questions, you are more than welcome at any point in time to contact me. Maybe you know of somebody who wants to sponsor. We'd love to connect with them. Maybe you know of someone who wants to volunteer with our Afghan programming. I can connect you with Sonia. We're really excited because it feels like this programming is really just deepening right now, and I'm excited to continue working with so many of you to help support that as well. And I'm just I put this lovely photo in here. This was actually the first sponsor group who welcomed a family back in October now. So maybe it was end of September. It's been some time. And now that family is really flourishing. We just got word that there was a really great job that the father applied to. And we also got word that the 2 13-year-old girl twins are in school now. And so some really great moments that are happening as the family really settles in, and the sponsor group is there for them to support them on that journey. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see here. I think that's my stop share. Great.
That's great.
Stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really exciting. And I'll just give a little plug for you and Alight. And I saw you guys on Almanac on Friday, and the sponsor mom was on. She was great, but really pretty exciting. And so I'm going to open it up. Any questions? Anyone have questions for Stephanie about Alight and how people can sign up for sponsorship?
I just want to ask, how do you match the sponsors with the families? And number two, it's you match them out there from the refugee camps, or they have to? I know in the past there was a lot of entry through the Mexico border.
Mhm, mhm.
How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we use the welcome.us platform called Welcome Connect to connect people together. And so it's this great platform that really releases the barriers of how do I connect with a family? How do I figure this out? Where both the Ukrainian family and also the sponsor group creates a profile. And the sponsor group, and I always want to make a note of this, that it never has to be, we have a lovely family who does sponsor, but we often have community groups, schools, faith groups, book clubs, other groups that step up. But both the sponsor group and the Ukrainian family create a profile, and the Ukrainian families actually initiate the connection. So they're able to look through profiles, actually know where they're going to. So, if someone's coming to Minnesota, they're aware that they're going to be in the cold. They don't have the false pretenses they're going to sunny California. But they're able to make a connection and view each other's profiles, and then they actually get the opportunity to chat. So a chat function opens up, they can chat with one another, and they both have to decide on both ends that it's a good fit. So often people, might be a better fit for a different reason, and there's, then they can offer sponsorship, and then all the other steps move forward. The other piece that I'll note is that something that's exciting is that because we have our team on the ground in Poland, they're able to offer support to people before they actually arrive in the United States. And so our Poland team will talk to anyone regardless of where they are. I will say most Ukrainian families are in Poland. A lot are in Germany. I've heard some are in Italy, some have been in France, some are still in Ukraine. And so the majority is in Poland, but our Poland team, no matter where the family is, will get connected to the family and make sure they have the right travel documents, make sure that they have their flights, they have safe temporary housing before they depart, and really make sure that the family is supported before they start that longer journey, to make sure that it feels smoother on both ends. So that's something that's been exciting. We see less and less people coming through the border because it's not as necessary because of this Uniting for Ukraine program that makes it an easier access point straight into the United States.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for coming on and updating us on Alight's work, and keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thanks. And yeah, I'm sure that there's a million other questions. Please feel free to reach out to me directly. If you know of someone who wants to sponsor, you want to learn about it yourself, or you have questionings about our Welcome Home programming, please reach out to me at steph@wearealight.org. That's in the chat. I'd love to chat with you. I know there's a million questions normally when it comes to being a sponsor, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to answer those and help you navigate it. Thanks, everybody, for allowing me to be here today and holding this space.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Well, we'll move on. Thanks, Stephanie, and we'll definitely share your contact information in our notes. All right. Next, we're gonna jump over to Beth Commerce. Beth is Deputy Director for Human Rights and Labor Standards for St. Paul's Department of Human Rights and Equal Economic Opportunity. Hi, Beth. And Beth's going to talk to us about HREEO at St. Paul.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. I would also like to introduce my colleague, Michelle Severson. She's probably just going to give you a couple waves. I've been told that Michelle lost her voice yesterday. It was her birthday. I don't know what the celebration entailed, but happy birthday, Michelle.
Happy birthday.
I'm going to really quickly share my screen. My caveat here is that I am at home with a sick kid and have 2 dogs here. So if I go on mute and gesture to someone else, you'll know it's your turn to jump in. So if I can just fumble through my open screens, that would be great.
Yep, we have HREEO overviews up.
Great. That's great. So we are going to talk about HREEO. Our mission is serving St. Paul residents and businesses. You can see that by advancing justice and equity. And our 3 components are through education, advocacy, and enforcement. Sometimes the enforcement gets all the attention, but we really do strive to do education and advocacy as well. You'll have to bear with me as I figure out all the tricks of this slide. There are 4 main areas in HREEO. One is the procurement division. Everything the city of St. Paul purchases goes through our very small but mighty procurement staff. So if we are taking a giraffe on loan from another zoo, that will go through our procurement department. Everything from giraffes and animals to salt and sand that they use on the streets in the winter, the pencils that we use. Literally every single contract goes through this team. Our next division is contract compliance. You know, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights sets workforce goals for contractors who do business with the state of Minnesota in certain areas and under certain amounts. And St. Paul follows those workforce goals. And so we monitor contracts to see how the entities with which we do business are doing, how their good faith effort is toward diversifying their staff in terms of race, ethnicity, and gender. So. We also have our administration team. They really they ensure that we run well. They keep the engine running. On my side of it, I'm on the human rights and labor standards side with Michelle. And we do have 3 different areas in our human rights department. We investigate and enforce Chapter 183, which is our own human rights ordinance. This PowerPoint I've given you, Edmundo, there are links in there if you want to share it with anybody so they can, you know, dive deep into the areas we have authority over. You can get access to the complaint process. On the human rights side, we focus on individual complaints of discrimination. We do have contracts with HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Department for the United States government, or HUD, yeah, and the EEOC. So we do workforce discrimination for them and housing discrimination for HUD. And then we do other discrimination based on the human rights ordinance. We have our accessibility program, which is even mightier than the procurement department because it is Michelle. Michelle works hard. She is the accessibility coordinator for the entire city. She's been really working hard to identify leads in every city department that will prioritize making St. Paul accessible and more livable for our neighbors with disabilities, and also for English language learners and for folks who are under the language, the English proficiency plan. So now I'm stumbling over my words, I apologize. We also have the PCARC. The PCARC is civilian complaints of allegations of police misconduct. And then we have our labor standards team, which for labor standards, we enforce minimum wage and earn sick and safe time. And there's another one here that's set to expire. So I took it out, the hospitality right to recall. And that ordinance is, in essence, if employees are laid off because of something like a pandemic, that those employees have the first right to their jobs, to getting their jobs back. We set minimum wage in the city. You can see that online. And then we also enforce earn sick and safe time. Every employee in the city of St. Paul who works in the city of St. Paul is required to earn 1 hour of sick time for every 30 hours worked. So it's pretty awesome. We do have a lot of commissions and committees in HREEO. And they're always accepting applications. There's my little plug. I put them in alphabetical order. We have the advisory committee on aging. They really work to keep the mayor and the mayor's team, and by default, the rest of the city informed on what it's like to live in St. Paul when you're aging. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are barriers? The HREEO Commission is kind of a unique body, as is the PCARC. HREEO Commission and PCARC have the capacity to review cases. The police, civilian, internal affairs, like I said earlier, reviews cases of allegations of police misconduct. Very, very defined set of areas. That's all available online, and it's linked to in this presentation. And then the HREEO Commission would see a case if there's an appeal to a determination we've made. Like right now, our HREEO Commission is going to be seeing our very first ever appeal to an earned sick and safe time determination. It's pretty exciting because it'll really push the envelope on that ordinance, really, and how much we will stand up behind it. So we have our Labor Standards Advisory Committee. It's pretty new. I am really hoping that that committee will push the mayor and the mayor's team and the city council to make St. Paul a better place to work. And that it will also think about business owners in that paradigm as well. And then we have the Mayor's Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities. We call it MACPD, and that is a committee that Michelle sits at the helm of. And that committee, they just met with Public Works. I almost said it incorrectly, to talk about challenges of navigating the city when you're living with disabilities, especially in the wintertime. So that is what we do in a nutshell. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Michelle's contact information and my contact information is here. I hope that wasn't too short. No, I hope that wasn't too boring either. But I would love to take questions, and maybe Michelle wants to try to take a question here or there if I can't answer it. So by all means.
No, this is great. We really want to, get city departments known and get people to know where they can get help. And this has been very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also really one of the focuses that Edmundo and I had discussed in preparing for today was thinking about how human rights sometimes are viewed as a very foreign concept, and just really understanding that these are everyday things, everyday concepts that apply in our everyday life. And so having people understand how city employees defend and share information about people's rights is something we felt was very important for today. So very grateful that you're able to come on, Beth and Michelle. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. And if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or put your question in the chat or just shout it out while we have Beth and Michelle here with us today.
Yeah, and I would add to what you said, Michelle, you're absolutely right. I also think that sometimes human rights, it seems so conceptual that it doesn't seem accessible, but we are in your city, right? In St. Paul and Minneapolis. I know that Bloomington, Duluth, in different cities around the state as well, they're starting to get some ordinances in these areas, so they have enforcement capability too, which is pretty exciting.
Perfect. Thank you. And let's see. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Edmundo, I don't know if you're seeing any.
No, I didn't see. I did put Beth and Michelle's contact info in the chat as well. So.
Yeah, I will
Thank
say.
Thank you for being with us.
Oh, can I just tell you one big effort that Michelle is doing is updating our language access program around the entire city. And whether someone doesn't speak English or is an English language learner, Michelle is pushing the whole city to do better, to think about how we meet people in our offices, how we meet people online, how we serve the community, and how we can do it better. So it's pretty awesome that she's here. Yeah, and I really hope you reach out.
Absolutely.
That's excellent. Thank you. And if there's any information specific to language access on the City of St. Paul webpage, please know that that is very interesting. And if there's anything that you could put in the chat, we do take notes from these meetings in addition to having them recorded. So we'll share any links afterwards. So thank you again for being
Yeah.
with us. And
Thank you.
I think that we're going to take a food break. We're going to take
Yep.
a Minneapolis Health Department break here in a second. I think that we've got Justo Garcia with us from the City of Minneapolis Health Department as we're going into the holiday season. I will turn it over to you, Justo, to share some information and updates from the city's health department.
Well, we have a lot of things. To everybody, my name is Justo Garcia. I'm a senior environmental health specialist with the city of Minneapolis. Another work, a health inspector. So the one who goes to restaurants, hotels, and pretty much every place where food is made, including community event. Last weekend, I was just at the Viking Stadium doing inspections there. So it's basically our job is making sure you go and celebrate at the public places, restaurants, and just don't walk out of there with diarrhea. That's our goal. However, now, one of the things is I just very excited to share with you is we are really trying to take a very hard approach into providing services to our immigrant communities. We are actually looking to organizations, agencies within the city of Minneapolis that will like pretty much to branch out or look at food businesses, hospitality businesses as a possibility for their clients to be able to get job. We understand most cases, one of the first job that an immigrant get is actually in our kitchen and restaurants, especially those coming from Central, South America, and also Europe, Asia. And so what we are doing, I mean, we started talking to an organization in North Minneapolis called Neon. They do actually have an amazing program that is actually, what they is just creating or incubator for people that want to go into food businesses, regardless what type of business. And that idea of incubator, I mean, they are just unique in that area. However, in your organization, if you are interested in providing food safety training for your clients, and notice some of this food safety training, we actually can provide certificates that allow them actually to be more competitive when they are looking for those jobs, especially within the food industry. And the food industry, remember, is one part is the restaurants and the other part are actually the food manufacturing companies. So having that food background, it's a very key aspect that those employers are looking. And reality is the areas in which really are incredible need of employees. We just unfortunately had a couple of companies who have even been busted for hiring minors actually to work in those jobs. And part is they are really having a hard time getting people. And for most, of us who work with immigrants, one thing that I tell you is they just want to get back to work. And regardless, once they come from wherever they come, they usually, and whatever the title was, they usually just put their titles on the title under the arm, but they are ready to do any job. They love to be productive, and the idea is to provide those. So we are being very intentional. One thing that I also want to mention to you is, there is the Department of Agriculture have this have actually expand what was known as the cottage food program. Cottage food program allow people to make certain food items and they can prepare those in their homes. And so it's basically was a modification of the pickle bill, in which initially was $5,000 cap. Then the cottage food start that and move it to 18,000 initially. And right now, the state is allowed up to sales to $78,000 per individual that is registered within this program. To get registered for this program, all what you have to do is a 4-hour training. That training, it's provided mainly through the University of Minnesota, but I have done training myself. I've actually had provide training and certification for folks in the community. I have done it at the White House. I have done it in North Minneapolis. I have done it in a few other places. And so this is a great opportunity if you are trying to get also your clients that, may have those ideas. They are coming from other places. The first thing is, we just, show them the products that they can make because they are limited. But then, how just to register and get that. I'm going to put a link into the chat for that particular program. But this is just one of those examples that we really want now to get out there to the community organization so they can have those tools and help their clients get jobs. The city of Minneapolis have a really good website, and I'm putting also the link to the webpage for the food safety, where we have also training videos, materials, and a lot of stuff that people can just grab and use. And so those are also in several languages. For sure, we do have Somali, English, Spanish, Hmong, Chinese, and we are when the need is there, we also hire interpreters and we provide those too. So it just, I don't want to take more time, but I just want to tell you if you are interested in getting those, and unfortunately it's only for Minneapolis. However, your clients don't just have to be from Minneapolis. So if you are an organization that operates out of Minneapolis and you have your clients out of the greater metro area, as long as you can locate the training here in Minneapolis, I'll be happy to do it. I will happy to talk to you. If you want more information, feel free, reach out to me. I'm going to put my contact here in the chat, and you can reach out to me directly. And if you just want to get some ideas on how to go about, I'll be happy to sit and talk to you. One of my coworkers, Leslie Foreman, who is our community outreach person, she's a great contact. We work together in this role. My role is actually health inspector, but my emphasis is in community outreach. So, which is a really good things within our health department. And then the reason, honestly, that we create this, it was in the very beginning, through focus group, we actually find out that was a really big gap within our immigrant communities and especially the food safety culture. So we really try to help folks to, number one, be safe for their families, and also be able to get into the food industry, just knowing and creating that food safety culture. So thank you. I'll just, if you have any questions, I don't know how much time do I have, but I'll be happy to answer any question.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Justo, for joining us, for sharing this information. Very helpful. If you could put your contact information in the chat so people can reach out to you, that would be super. If there are any questions, please, people, feel free to raise your hand, just ask your question, or put it in the chat, and we'll leave it open for a moment to give people time in case there are any questions for Justo. But again, while we're waiting, thank you very much, Justo, for making time this evening to join us. And thank you for the links that you've put in the chat. And I'm not seeing any questions or raised hands, and we are at 5:32. So I'm going to quickly transition to one topic and then turn it to Edmundo to discuss immigrant and refugee inclusion work in the Twin Cities. I just wanted to note on the subject of new arrivals from the southern border. In Minneapolis and in St. Paul, we are learning of new arrivals to the Twin Cities from the southern border, including from countries such as Ecuador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Venezuela, El Salvador, and Honduras. And our cities together are hosting monthly virtual space on alternate Wednesdays, a virtual meeting from 6 to 7 p.m. For community members, community leaders to share information, identify needs, and connect people to resources. So if you're interacting with families who are new arrivals who may not have access to resources and you would like to discuss that, please do feel free to join us again, alternate Wednesdays from 6 to 7 p.m. Our next virtual meeting will be on December 14th at 6 p.m. If you'd like to join, please do reach out to myself or to Edmundo to receive the link to join. We will be returning to this topic in January with additional information. And also wanted to share that Hennepin County has set up an Amazon wish list for individuals who might be interested in donating clothing and other necessities for new arrivals. So we'll put that link into the chat as well. So we'll leave it open for a quick second. And if there's anything else that you wanted to share on that, please do feel free to share. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to you for the next topic, which is immigrant and refugee inclusion work in the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Thanks, Michelle. Unless anyone has questions, I'll just jump right into talking about the inclusion work that both the cities of Minneapolis have been involved in over the course of this last year. You know, given that it's the end of the year, we thought we'd really do a quick review of what's gone on. I think we're really very excited about the work that we've done and completed, and are really thankful to all of you who've been involved in a lot of these projects, and it wouldn't have been possible without the help we've gotten from community members, nonprofit organizations, other governmental entities and employees, you know, really just jumping in and helping us with so many of these projects. You know, in January, it's going to be 2 years that we started this forum as a way of kind of sharing information around immigration issues, and it's kind of expanded into really just talking about different services and issues that impact our immigrant and refugee communities. So we're really thankful for you guys joining us every month, and look forward to continuing with this forum. You know, big accomplishment this year was the Journey to Belonging Twin Cities report on immigrant and refugee inclusion that we worked on jointly, the two cities, with both of our respective chambers of commerce. And because of that report, one of the recommendations was we needed to do something around getting information out around healthcare and impacts of health impacts on our migrant communities. And because of that, we hosted in June a day-long symposium with the University of Minnesota Law School and medical schools to talk about the health impacts of irregular migration to the Twin Cities. We also celebrated that month Immigrant Heritage Month and World Refugee Day. In September, we held an event for our Afghan community at the Afghan Cultural Society for new arrivals to do Know Your Rights updates and information around housing and landlord-tenant laws. We also did an event with the Ukrainian community, and I believe that was in November, trying to help them to understand their legal rights and what different statuses that they are able to obtain, what they mean, and what was, and also around being able to obtain public benefits. We also this year started a 1-year campaign to increase naturalization in both cities, because together we have over 20,000 permanent residents who are technically eligible to naturalize. And that campaign is going to go on through September, through Citizenship Day, which is September 17th, 2023. And we continue to fund our legal service programs in Minneapolis. I know there's several different types of legal service programs that the city is funding, and it looks like they're going to increase that funding with $150,000 for next year, hopefully. And in St. Paul, we continue to fund our removal defense program and with our partner Ramsey County, and we look forward to continue that for the future. With that, I'll turn it over to Michelle if you want to add anything. If I missed anything on the highlights.
Yeah, thank you. And so I put those the initiatives and the activities into the chat, and where links are available to actual recordings, I've included those as well, and invite people to take a moment or take an hour or take a few hours to review some of these wonderful events in this program and taken place over the course of 2022, and to emphasize what Edmundo has said. Really, much of this work would have been impossible without the support and participation of many individuals in community, including many of you. So thank you so much for a successful year. I think it's important to recognize our victories and accomplishments, and much gratitude to you for helping make these activities and these initiatives possible. And with regard to what Edmundo has shared, I wanted to share that City Council has indeed passed a one-time increase in immigration legal service funding in the amount of $150,000, more than doubling our immigration legal service funding for 2023. So really excited about that. And also wanted to share that in Minneapolis this morning, there was a resolution that was passed in recognition of International Migrants Day and Human Rights Day. And we had some wonderful speakers to this resolution, which was advanced by Council members Chavez, Chugtai, and Osman, and passed this morning. And Farhia Budul, an employee of the city of Minneapolis, and Ian Ondo, a member of the community, both spoke to the resolution. So I've included the recording in the chat here, and we'll plug that back into. So thank you very, very much. And with that, we'll turn to community updates. Are there community or additional government updates that people wanted to share? I know that I think Susan had to jump off. I'm not sure if you're still on, Susan. If you wanted to share the update that you had, please feel free to jump in if you'd like to.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. Minnesota Welcome Center. We are just finding there's a need for winter clothes. But I mean, it sounds like you're doing all these wonderful things, but just one more place. There's been a effort to collect adult men and women coats, hats, gloves. Tuesdays, Thursdays, 7 o'clock, people can just stop in and get a coat or hat or gloves.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I am just noting Minnesota Welcome Center. If there's a link or a flyer or anything that you'd like to share that we can distribute afterwards, Susan, please feel free to do that. Thank you. Any other updates that people may want to share? Accomplishments, things that you're feeling excited about that you'd like to communicate to others?
I'm just excited about this St. Paul, Minneapolis immigrant welcome status. I think they start going in the right direction. So I'm pretty happy about. It's not just ceremonial, but it's been put in place. So I have seen a lot of I will say even administrative changes who actually really kind of going toward that direction. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Justo. And I'm seeing a question in the chat. If there's a website for the Minnesota Welcome Center, or some other contact information. And Susan, if the best point of contact is connecting with you by email, if you would not mind putting your email into the chat so that people can learn more about the Welcome Center directly through you. If there's a website or another place that you would recommend that people get more information, please do share that. And Edmundo, I'm going to turn it to you. If there are not other updates, I can't believe that we're actually running on time.
That's
It's
great.
good.
That's great. Did we want to say anything about immigration news? There's a little bit of news.
Please.
A federal court struck down Title 42, which we've talked about in the past here. Title 42 being a way that the federal government was using health grounds for keeping people from entering the United States. And we'll put a link in the chat to that court decision, information about that court decision. Also, the federal government extended and redesignated Haiti for TPS, which we're very excited about because there's a lot of Haitians that have come in recently and in the past for many, many years, and extending TPS was something we've talked about in the past for Haitians. Very, very important, very excited about that. There was a policy change regarding authorization for Afghans and Ukrainians who came in on parole status and their ability to obtain or to work and having employment authorization incident to their entering on parole or having parole while they're waiting to get their EAD, their employment authorization document. And we'll also put a link in the chat to that information on that program and that change in the regulations. And with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us over this past year and really for just really supporting our programs and supporting the work that Michelle and I do and in each of our respective cities. Okay.
I mean, the dynamic, the way that you two work together, interact is amazing. Have you thought about, I mean, I'm pretty sure in other cities around the metro area, you may have not, some versions of somebody who does your job that you can also invite it to this meeting, because I think this, I mean, and it came out in another meeting, but I think we cannot ignore that we are all in this together. And I think Edmundo, you said it at one point. I mean, immigrants, they are not just coming to Minneapolis and St. Paul, but it's just many other metro area cities. So,
yeah. Oh, well, we're always looking. We're always looking for people. We actually host a multi-jurisdictional meeting once a month where we get together with other jurisdictions, actually from all over the state. We've had people from St. Cloud and Duluth and Austin. So we're always looking for people who are doing this work so that we can share information, share resources, and work together whenever possible, because so many of the people we work with, I'll give you a great example. I found a group of Nicaraguans, new arrivals, who are coming to a Lutheran church in the Midway in St. Paul for food shelf, and I went to talk to them, and lo and behold, I found out they all live in Minneapolis, but they come and they're trying to find work and food in St. Paul. So there's just so much that happens, and it really is really important for the work that we do to be able to just work with each other.
Yep, there's definitely a lot of value in collaboration. Also would note that there is a state level position, the Assistant Commissioner for Immigrant and Refugee Affairs at the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. And at the state legislature this year, there is an initiative to make that position permanent. So something important to follow in terms of state level collaboration on immigrant and refugee inclusion initiatives that would strengthen the welcoming infrastructure that already exists in our state. So something that we're really looking forward to. I also want to note that PJ Doyle has added in the chat that the Twin Cities Red Cross is hiring for an additional disaster program specialist and has put information in the chat about that. And to emphasize what Edmundo has said, we are very grateful for our collaboration with you and the many community members that have made immigrant and refugee inclusion initiatives over the course of 2022 possible. And we look forward to working collaboratively with you in 2023 and building on this year's accomplishments to make both Minneapolis and St. Paul and the state of Minnesota places where all can achieve their fullest potential. So we'll turn it over to you all in case there are any last thoughts that you may want to share But I think that's it for us. And again, I always marvel at the fact that we end up ending on time or early. And I'm grateful to everyone for keeping our agenda moving and with momentum. So thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone. And then
Thank you.
Remember, cook your turkey, chicken, pork, poultry. Well done.
Thank you, Justo. Good
That's
to see you.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.